Well, that was fast. Hey guys, how's it going? Once again, this is Ewan Henry with Tech in My Life. So today I got something a little different. I want to talk about something that's quite literally near and dear to my heart. So back in 2017, I was diagnosed with AFib. Now, 2017 is 2024. That's about 7 years since I've been diagnosed. And I just want to talk to you guys about AFib and one of the advantages, I guess, of being fit, being aware of what your body's doing, and tracking your health on a regular basis. And the thing that I've used over the past 7 years, actually before that I've used to track my fitness, my health, my training, is my Garmin. So for the day-to-day activity, as an activity tracker, I use my Garmin Fenix. This is the Fenix 6. I started off with the Fenix 3 years ago. I'm kind of in that whole Garmin ecosystem. My cycling computer is a Garmin, and my heart rate monitor, and a few other items. So I'm in that Garmin ecosystem. And one of the things I've used along with the Garmin watch, the Fenix 6, is Garmin Connect. Now, Garmin Connect, I'm going to get into a little bit more with that a little later. But for right now, I want to get this going by talking about AFib. And what is AFib? AFib is probably one of the most common heart arrhythmias in the US. So what is AFib? AFib is basically an irregular beating of the heart. And it's one of the most common heart arrhythmias in the US. Approximately between 2 million to 6 million people have AFib in the US. And it's quite common. It's actually quite common in athletes. Believe it or not, a lot of endurance athletes have AFib, and a lot of senior citizens. So we're in the athletes are in a good bunch, I guess. Now, for me, like I said, my first diagnosis was approximately 7 years ago. And I want to talk about that. Now, the things that I talk about, so while I have AFib, I am not a doctor. A lot of the technical names you guys can look up if you're curious. If you have any health issues or concerns, consult your doctor, consult your local physician, consult a professional. I'm not a doctor. Like I was saying, I'm not a doctor. I'm a guy that has AFib, and I just want to share my experience with you guys. And let's get into that right now. So, like I said, starting in 2017, my first episode, I did a bike ride, about 55, 60 miles. And I felt really, really good. I had a really good off-season training that winter. This was August. I did a lot of riding during that summer. So I felt really fit. And I go for a 50-mile, 55-mile bike ride. I get back home. It was a group ride. So not super aggressive. On Sundays, we usually do a tempo ride. So Saturday is a little bit more aggressive. Sunday is just tempo. So I do the group ride, felt great. Got home, I did my after ride drink. I have a little process where I make my recovery drink, and I did that. Just kind of took it easy the rest of the day. And when I woke up, something felt off. Like I couldn't put my finger on what was going on, but I didn't feel right. So I get up, I go to work. Now, I commute to work. I work about 60, 65 miles away from my home, and I take a train. So I get to the train station, and I have to walk up 2 flights of stairs. Now, I do this 5 days a week, and I never have an issue, ever. So I walk up these 2 flights of stairs, and I get to the top of the stairs, and I'm lightheaded, I'm winded, I feel like I'm gonna lose consciousness. I'm leaning against the wall to brace myself from like falling. I feel like I'm gonna pass out. So I catch my breath, I get on the train, I get to work. Now it's lunchtime, and I go down to the cafeteria, and I'm taking the stairs back up. And again, I get to my floor. From the 2nd floor to I work on the 5th floor. And again, I'm like breathing hard, heavy, my heart's racing, and I'm feeling lightheaded. So I'm like, what the heck is going on? I immediately call my doctor. I leave work early, and I get to my doctor's office, told him about my day, told him about what's going on. He hooked me up to an EKG, the echocardiograph, and he says, you know, kind of casually, you're in AFib. And I'm like, oh, okay, AFib. You know, I see the commercials. No one ever seemed like it's something that requires like emergency action. It's always kind of casual. So I'm like, okay, what's AFib? So he tells me, you know, you have a regular beating of the heart. And my next question, so what do we do? How, we know what's going on? How does it start? What started it? What are we gonna do to stop it? So he immediately tells me, well, we need to get you over to a cardiologist. And I'm like worried now because he's now starting to seem a little more pressed. He's, you know, everything all of a sudden seems a little bit more critical because I guess he figures I don't have a history of AFib, and this is my first bout of AFib. So he sends me over to a cardiologist, and same thing, echocardiograph. And he says, same thing, you're in AFib. Got a car back. So yeah, tells me I'm in AFib. I'm like, okay. So he goes a little bit further in depth and says, well, you're in AFib, but the danger is not so much the AFib, it's the risk factors of AFib. And one of the biggest risk factors is stroke. So he explains that AFib, there's a cluster of cells. Now, if I get the name wrong, guys, let me know down in the comments, but I think it's the SA node that is basically your heart's pacemaker. It tells the heart when to beat, how to beat. And that area of cells, if there's an irregularity, it can send off too many impulses, or sometimes those cells grow outside of that cluster. And once it grows outside of the cluster, it starts firing that beat impulse. And now I have an irregular heartbeat. So I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, so I have an irregular heartbeat. And he says, well, because the blood isn't pumping the way it's supposed to, blood can pool in a chamber of the heart, and that blood can be pushed into an artery and travel up to your brain, and you can have a stroke. So now I'm like, I just went from like semi-worried to now I'm just almost panicked. I'm like, a stroke? So he says, well, yeah, we're gonna have to get you on blood thinners. Made a prescription for me. I think it's Coumadin or Xarelto, one of the two. Or at some point, maybe I was on both. But he made this this prescription for me, put me on blood thinner, and he says, well, what we can do is after you're on blood thinner for a few months, we'll do a procedure called a cardioversion, which they put 2 electrodes on you and give you a little shock, and it can reset the heart. Now, some people, that works, and they can stay in sinus rhythm. Sinus rhythm is just regular heartbeat, the normal rhythm of your heart beating. So I said, okay, that's the game plan. Let's do that. So around December 2017, I have a cardioversion, and they knock me out, do the procedure. I wake up and I'm in regular sinus rhythm, so I'm fine. I'm like, okay, from here on, we're good. Now, almost exactly a year later, I am just sitting on the couch. The door bell rings. I jump up and I feel lightheaded. And I'm like, am I in AFib? Sure enough, a year later, I'm in AFib. Now, I'm stressed, but we did speak of a game plan before this episode. So once everything was resolved the year prior, the game plan was, if I ever slip back into AFib, we're going to set me up for a procedure called a catheter ablation. Now, the catheter ablation it's like minor surgery, I guess, minimally invasive surgery, let's say that, where they make an incision with a tool through the groin, more like a puncture. They go in through the groin with a tool, and they go all the way up into the inner chambers of the heart where that SA node is, and they use either cold or heat to create a scar tissue around that SA node. So what happens is now that signal is now localized to that area. And this is my rudimentary understanding of the procedure, guys. So, like I said before, the only advice I really want to give outside of see a doctor is, I'm not a professional, see a doctor. That's the one consistent advice I will give. So on one side, there's an instrument like a laparoscope. So they go in on both sides of the groin. One side they go in with like a laparoscope, which is like a camera, I guess, to see what's going on in there. And the other side, they go in with the tool that's used to make this scars around that area on the inner chamber of the heart. So it was like a 4-hour procedure. And I wake up and the first thing I hear is my heart beating in a regular rhythm. So I'm super happy about that. Now, yeah, funny side note, because they got it going through to the groin, they had to shave me bare. I tell you, I never felt so, let's just say, uncomfortable in my life. That, so I don't know which doctor or nurse did it, but because they had to shave me bare, I wake up and it's cold in the operating room and I feel the chill immediately. So my junk is out exposed and I'm just cold, but that's just a funny side note. Now, like I said, I wake up, I'm in sinus rhythm, and for approximately 2.5 years after that, no problem, everything is good. But one day I'm back to riding, everything is back to regular schedule, and I go for a ride, I come back home, I make my nutrition drink, my recovery drink, and it was a really cold smoothie, and I had brain freeze. So I have brain freeze and I'm like, oh geez, this is just like really, really bad brain freeze. Now, a little while after that, I'm starting to feel weird. I'm feeling uncomfortable again. And the thing that's been like the tool that I kind of use to measure what's going on, like I said, is my Garmin Phoenix watch that I use sort of as an activity tracker. Now, I look at my Garmin and my heart rate's really high. So, you know what? Let me go back a little bit before this. Speaking of heart rate being really high, now, one of the reasons why I decided to not try to use medication to treat my AFib is, as an athlete, especially an endurance athlete, I have a really low resting heart rate. We're talking 40. When I'm really fit and really good shape, I'm down to like 40 beats a minute resting heart rate. So one of the medications, because my heart rate when I'm in AFib spikes up really high, the medication, when I say really high, high for me, because high for me is like a resting heart rate of maybe 70, 80 beats a minute. That's really high for me for a resting heart rate. Now, again, I chose not to do the medication because what the medication would do is lower my already low resting heart rate. And obviously that can be dangerous because if I'm not in AFib, right, and I'm using a medication that lowers my heart rate and I'm taking it on a regular and I slip into AFib and I have that medication in my system that lowers my heart rate even more, that could be dangerous. I just didn't want to deal with that level of stress, thinking that, oh, I can slip into AFib and my heart rate and all that. I didn't want to deal with that. So I chose not to use medication and just do the procedure. Now, again, after the procedure, everything is great for approximately 2.5 years, but then I did have like a 40, not even 40, maybe 24-hour bout of AFib. I did have like a 24-hour bout of AFib. I slipped back into AFib because I had that cold drink, and forgive me if I messed the name up, but I think my doctor said it was a vagal-induced tachycardia, where the cold drink ended up triggering a bout of AFib for me. So for 24 hours, I went back into AFib, and I went into AFib and back out of AFib all by myself. But the thing was, I got to work and I had an appointment the following day to go see my doctor, and I had to leave work early. I'm rushing to catch a train, and keep in mind, I'm in AFib, my heart's already beating irregular and high heart rate, so I'm already having shortness of breath, and I had to run to catch a train. And I ran and I caught the train, and I sat down, and I wasn't out of breath. I didn't have a headache. I just sat down and felt fine. And I looked at my Garmin, and I'm back in sinus rhythm. So we don't know if the running triggered the AFib. Triggered the. I don't know if running to catch the train just put me back into sinus rhythm, or if it was just something that just kind of casually happened. But long story short, I went back into sinus rhythm for up until now, actually. So that was 2.5 years ago. I had a 48-hour bout of AFib, and my doctor said, by the way, the doctor that did the procedure is not my cardiologist, so I actually have 2 doctors that I see whenever something is hinky. One is an electrophysiologist, and he's the doctor that actually did the procedure, and the other is my cardiologist. So real quick shout out to Dr. D'Souza and Dr. Russo. Those guys take really good care of me. But it's been 2.5 years. I've had no issues. I'm now 53 years old, and I still cycle on a regular basis. It's my activity. It keeps me feeling healthy. Gets me out here on days like this where it's absolutely a stunner of a day. And you know, I think although AFib affects endurance athletes, I don't see me giving up my cycling. I also do some skiing, but I wouldn't really consider skiing, unless you're cross-country skiing, an endurance sport. But my point to all of this story is something very different from what I normally do on my channel, because I wanted to talk about health, being healthy, putting your health, making your health a priority, because, you know, I saw how this moment affected my wife and my son, and he was 7 at the time when I was first diagnosed, and by the time I had the surgery, he was 8. And the look on his face, just the utter terror, not knowing what's going to happen to his dad. My wife's a very resilient woman, but obviously a procedure where a doctor or somebody's going to be going in messing with my heart, it's a pretty big deal. She handled it very well. She handled stress really, really well. Very supportive throughout the whole ordeal. But you know, to be healthy, it's to be surviving and being here for them, to be, you know, just, I wouldn't want my son dealing with the trauma of losing his dad at a young age. And there's things that can definitely happen. In certain situations, I have very little control of that. But in this particular situation, I made it a point to stay on top of it. I made it a point to stay on top of my health. And guys, if you're out there and you're having any type of symptoms, please don't hesitate to contact your doctor, your local physician, your local professional, and stay on top of your health. Get checked out, you know, because I don't want you guys checking out any sooner than you have to. And with that, I'll say goodbye. Stay fit, stay healthy. Till the next time, between now and then, stay safe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace. Huh, look at that. Nice heron. Oh, and by the way, I'm just going by some cranberry bogs here. New Jersey. Bet you guys didn't know New Jersey could be this beautiful, huh? Well, it is. Peace.